Most women are told their hormones are normal, even when they feel exhausted, irritable, or out of balance. The truth is, your blood test numbers may say one thing, but your body tells another story. Let's break down what those results really mean and how they connect to the way you feel every day. Three main instruments are playing: estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. Each one has a unique sound, but together they create harmony. When estrogen rises and falls at the right time, it's like the violin leading the melody. Progesterone comes in to balance the tune, softening and stabilizing the rhythm, like a cello smoothing the background. And then testosterone adds its deeper notes, giving strength and vitality to the music. When these three are in balance, the body feels steady, energy flows, moods are stable, and weight is easier to manage. But if even one of these instruments plays too loudly or too softly, the entire orchestra feels out of tune. That's exactly what a blood test can reveal. Not just a number, but whether the harmony is being kept or disrupted. Estrogen often gets the spotlight because it drives so many aspects of a woman's cycle and overall health. Too much estrogen can feel like a violin screeching, heavy periods, bloating, headaches, and mood swings that seem unpredictable. Too little, on the other hand, can be like the music fading out, leading to hot flashes, dryness, bone weakness, and low energy. Progesterone steps in to counterbalance estrogen. When the levels of progesterone are healthy, it calms the chaos, helping with sleep, easing anxiety, and preparing the body for potential pregnancy. If blood tests show progesterone is too low, then the balance tips. Estrogen dominates unchecked, and that imbalance is often behind issues like irritability, irregular cycles, and weight gain around the middle. Then there's testosterone. It may not be the first hormone people think about in women, but its role is critical. In the orchestra, testosterone is like the percussion section, subtle but powerful. Too much can overpower everything, leading to acne, hair growth in unwanted places, or conditions like PCOS. Too little, and the music loses its drive, leaving behind fatigue, low motivation, and a gradual decline in muscle strength. A blood test showing a drop in testosterone explains why some women feel they've lost their spark. Even when all the other numbers look normal, the truth is these hormones don't work in isolation. Estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone are constantly communicating, much like instruments listening to each other to stay in tune. One rise triggers another fall, one peak balances another trough. When doctors read hormone blood test results, they often glance at single numbers, but that misses the point. It's not whether one is high or low on its own. It's whether the entire pattern is harmonious. A woman can have normal estrogen but still feel off because progesterone isn't keeping pace. She can have normal testosterone, yet still struggle with symptoms because estrogen and progesterone are not balancing it correctly. What makes this even more important is how the imbalance shows up in daily life. The body speaks in symptoms long before it shows up in numbers. Fatigue that doesn't go away, mood swings that feel out of proportion, weight gain that resists every effort. These are not random. They are the sound an orchestra slipping out of tune. The blood test is simply the sheet music confirming what the ears, or in this case, the body, has already been telling. Estrogen is often described as the hormone that defines womanhood, but in reality, it is more like the fuel that keeps the entire system running smoothly. When the right amount is present, everything works with ease, energy is stable, cycles are predictable, and bones, brain, and heart function stay strong. But when estrogen tips too far in one direction, either too high or too low, it's like mishandling an engine. Flood it with too much fuel, and the car chokes, sputters, and struggles. Give it too little spark, and the car won't even start. That's exactly how estrogen behaves inside the body, and blood test results are the diagnostic tools that show whether the system is over-fueled or underpowered. When estrogen levels are too high, the engine is flooded. The body runs on overdrive. This often shows up as heavy or painful menstrual cycles, water retention, breast tenderness, or mood swings that feel overwhelming. High estrogen doesn't just make the reproductive system noisy, it also influences the brain. Anxiety, irritability, and sudden shifts in mood are common signs that estrogen has tipped the scale. Blood tests that reveal elevated estrogen are not just numbers on a page. They are the biochemical explanation for why someone feels bloated, tired, and emotionally volatile. The car may still be moving, but it's running rough, burning too much fuel, and leaving behind wear and tear. On the other side, when estrogen levels are too low, it's like turning the ignition with no spark. The body feels flat, sluggish, and unresponsive. This is most commonly seen in menopause, but younger women can also experience dips in estrogen due to stress, poor nutrition, or medical conditions. Symptoms like hot flashes, night sweats, and vaginal dryness are well known, but the impact of low estrogen reaches far beyond discomfort. Estrogen is a major protector of bone density, so when levels drop too low, bones begin to weaken, setting the stage for osteoporosis. It also plays a role in keeping the brain sharp and the heart protected. So low numbers on a blood test often explain memory lapses, difficulty concentrating, and changes in cardiovascular health. It's the equivalent of a car sitting idle in the driveway. The engine won't turn over, no matter how hard you press the gas. The most confusing part for many women is that the symptoms of high and low estrogen can overlap. Fatigue, mood swings, and weight changes happen on both ends of the spectrum, which is why blood tests are so important. They tell us whether the car is flooded or whether the spark is missing. Without those results, it's easy to mistake one for the other and chase solutions that never work. But even with the numbers in hand, context matters. A single lab value doesn't tell the whole story. Estrogen is constantly rising and falling throughout a woman's cycle. And what's high at one point may be perfectly normal at another. That's why it's better to think of estrogen not as a fixed number, but as a rhythm like the RPM gauge in a car engine. When the rhythm is smooth, the body runs effortlessly. When it's too fast or too slow, the strain becomes obvious. The symptoms, heavy cycles, hot flashes, bone weakness, are the body's way of sounding the alarm. They are not random inconveniences. They are signals that the fuel mix is off. The blood test confirms what the body already knows, showing whether estrogen is flooding the system or failing to ignite. Progesterone is often thought of only in terms of pregnancy, but in reality, it is the hormone that creates calm and stability in the body. If estrogen is the energy that drives growth and change, progesterone is the steady hand that keeps everything grounded. It's like the brakes on a moving car, not there to stop life from moving forward, but to keep it under control. When progesterone is at healthy levels, sleep comes easily, moods are steady, and cycles run with a sense of order. But when blood tests show progesterone is low, the balance shifts and the body begins to feel as if it's running without a stabilizer. The first place this shows up is in the nervous system. Progesterone has a direct calming effect on the brain, which is why many women notice that in the second half of the cycle, when progesterone should be rising, they feel more relaxed and grounded. When progesterone levels are too low, that calming influence is gone and anxiety often takes its place. Women describe feeling on edge, restless, or overwhelmed by small problems. A blood test showing low progesterone is not just a fertility marker, it's the biochemical explanation for why the mind won't settle. Sleep is another area where progesterone plays a powerful role. It helps the body produce JBA, a neurotransmitter that quiets the brain and allows for deep, restorative rest. Without enough progesterone, falling asleep becomes harder and staying asleep becomes a nightly battle. Waking up tired despite going to bed early is one of the silent signs of low progesterone. A lab result that confirms this doesn't only apply to reproductive health, it explains why energy is draining away and why mornings start with exhaustion instead of renewal. Mood swings and irritability also trace back to this imbalance. Progesterone acts as a counterbalance to estrogen. Without it, estrogen dominates the system, and that dominance often leads to emotional turbulence. A woman may feel short-tempered, reactive, or even depressed, not realizing that the root of it lies in her hormone balance. Doctors who glance at a lab report and see estrogen in the normal range often miss the bigger picture. Progesterone might be missing from the equation, leaving estrogen unchecked. This is where looking at single numbers can be misleading. A doctor may reassure a woman that her estrogen looks fine, but if progesterone is not measured or not taken seriously, the underlying imbalance remains hidden. Hormones are meant to work as partners, and progesterone's role is to keep estrogen from becoming overpowering. Ignoring progesterone in a blood test is like checking the accelerator of a car, but never testing the brakes. The system may still function, but it's constantly under stress. For many women, the symptoms of low progesterone are brushed off as stress, aging, or simply normal. But the reality is different. The anxiety that won't let up, the restless nights, the irritability that seems out of character, these are not just emotional struggles. They are physical signals of a missing stabilizer. The blood test confirms it, but only if the results are viewed as part of a bigger picture. Progesterone is not a minor player in women's health. It is the anchor that keeps the system from drifting. Testosterone is one of the most misunderstood hormones in women. Because it's often labeled as the male hormone, many assume it plays no real role in female health. But the truth is, women need testosterone just as much as men do, only in smaller amounts. It's not simply about libido or sexual drive. Testosterone is about vitality, energy, and strength. When it's in balance, women feel sharp, motivated, and physically capable. When blood tests show it's too high or too low, the impact reaches far beyond reproduction. When testosterone runs too high, it usually signals that something deeper is going on. In many women, the most common culprit is polycystic ovary syndrome, or PCOS. Excess testosterone in this condition throws the system into disarray. It can show up as acne that feels impossible to control, hair growth, in places women don't want it, or cycles that are irregular and unpredictable. A blood test that reveals elevated testosterone is often the missing clue that explains why these symptoms don't respond to surface treatments. It's not just skin or hair or weight. It's the hormone orchestra being pulled out of rhythm by one instrument playing too loudly. But just as damaging is when testosterone runs too low. Many women don't realize that testosterone is what fuels motivation and drive. It gives the body its spark to get up and move, to build muscle, to maintain endurance. Without enough of it, fatigue creeps in, exercise feels harder, and even small efforts leave the body drained. Muscles weaken, recovery slows, and strength training produces little result. A woman may look at her blood test, see normal estrogen and progesterone, and still wonder why she feels lifeless. Low testosterone is often the answer, but because it's thought of as hormone. Hormone, it's overlooked in women's health. The emotional impact is just as real. Women with low testosterone often describe feeling flat, unmotivated, or disconnected from their own vitality. They may lose interest in things that once excited them, not realizing that the issue isn't in their willpower, but in their chemistry. This is where testosterone's role goes far beyond libido. It influences brain health, mood regulation, and even confidence. A drop in testosterone can leave a woman feeling invisible in her own life, and a simple blood test can explain why. The problem is that doctors often don't test testosterone in women unless there's a glaring reason, like infertility or extreme symptoms. Even when it is tested, the results are sometimes dismissed because the ranges are based on averages, not on how that woman actually feels. A woman can be on the low end of normal and still experience profound symptoms. Numbers alone don't tell the full story. The body's signals have to be read alongside the lab sheet. Testosterone then should be seen as a cornerstone of female health. Too much can disrupt balance, too little can drain life force, but just the right amount keeps energy, strength, and motivation alive. It's not about making women more masculine. It's about ensuring they have the fuel to live fully. A blood test that includes testosterone is not optional or secondary. It's essential for understanding the bigger picture of hormonal health. The conversation about female hormones often stops at estrogen, progesterone, and sometimes testosterone, but that's only part of the story. Two other players have just as much power over how a woman feels: the thyroid and insulin. These aren't labeled as female hormones, yet they shape how estrogen and progesterone behave every single day. Think of the thyroid as the thermostat of the body and insulin as the fuel pump. If the thermostat is off, the system overheats or runs too cold. If the fuel pump isn't working, the engine sputters no matter how much gas you add. That's exactly how thyroid and insulin influence the balance of female hormones. When the thyroid is underactive, everything slows down. Women feel cold, tired, foggy, and often gain weight even without changing their habits. A blood test may show estrogen and progesterone levels in the normal range, but the woman still feels out of sync because the thermostat isn't set properly. Low thyroid hormones can make estrogen appear higher than it really is because the body isn't processing it efficiently. The result is symptoms of estrogen dominance, heavy cycles, mood swings, bloating, even though the lab numbers don't look alarming. On the other hand, when the thyroid is overactive, It speeds everything up. Cycles become shorter or irregular, weight drops suddenly, and anxiety becomes constant. Again, estrogen and progesterone are not the direct cause, but they're dragged out of balance because the thermostat is broken. Insulin plays a different role, but it's just as critical. As the hormone that manages blood sugar, insulin is the fuel pump that ensures energy gets into the cells. When insulin works well, the body uses glucose for steady energy, and the other hormones operate smoothly. But when insulin is chronically high, as in insulin resistance, it disrupts estrogen and progesterone in powerful ways. High insulin signals the ovaries to make more testosterone, which can lead to irregular cycles, infertility, and conditions like PCOS. At the same time, insulin resistance fuels inflammation, and that inflammation interferes with how estrogen and progesterone interact in the brain and reproductive system. A woman may feel tired, crave sugar, and gain stubborn weight around the middle. Yet her blood test for female hormones comes back normal. Without testing insulin, the real problem remains invisible. This is why looking at estrogen and progesterone alone can be so misleading. It's like trying to fix a car by only checking the oil while ignoring the fact that the engine is overheating and the fuel pump is failing. The car won't run right until the whole system is addressed, and the same is true for the body. A woman can have the most carefully measured hormone therapy, but if her thyroid is sluggish or her insulin is out of control, the balance will never hold. The bigger picture is what matters. Hormones are not separate silos. They are a network. The thyroid sets the temperature. Insulin manages the fuel, and estrogen and progesterone play their melody on top of that foundation. Ignoring thyroid and insulin tests while only checking female hormones is why so many women are told everything looks fine, when they feel anything but fine. The blood work doesn't lie, but it has to be read in context. Without that, it's just numbers on a page that don't match the lived experience. Blood tests are often presented as a list of numbers, each one compared to a range that is labeled normal. But health is not about single values, it's about how those values fit together. Hormones don't work in isolation. They rise and fall, push and pull, balance and counterbalance. Looking at estrogen without progesterone, or at thyroid without insulin, is like looking at one instrument and in an orchestra and calling it the whole performance. The music only makes sense when you listen to all of it at once. A woman may have estrogen that falls neatly in the middle of the chart, but if progesterone is too low, the balance is lost and the symptoms tell the real story. She may have thyroid hormones just within the normal range, but if insulin is high, the body still feels sluggish, tired, and out of rhythm. This is why so many women are told that everything looks fine while they continue to suffer. Numbers can look acceptable, but patterns reveal the truth. The real value of blood tests is not in whether one number is high or low, but in how they relate to each other. When you look at the full picture, the connections become clear. Estrogen dominance explains heavy cycles, but it often comes with low progesterone. Low testosterone clarifies why strength is fading, but it may also tie back to insulin resistance. Thyroid imbalance creates fatigue and mood swings, but it magnifies the effects of estrogen and progesterone shifts. Each hormone tells part of the story, but it's the pattern across all of them that reveals why someone feels the way they do. The most empowering part of this is that blood tests don't just identify problems, they point to solutions. Medication has a place, but lifestyle is the foundation that restores harmony. Nutrition stabilizes insulin and lowers inflammation, which in turn brings estrogen and progesterone into balance. Sleep repairs the brain's sensitivity to hormones and allows progesterone to have its calming effect. Stress management lowers cortisol, which otherwise steals from the delicate balance of reproductive hormones. Movement and strength training restore testosterone and help insulin work properly. These are not small adjustments. They are the levers that shift the entire system back into tune. Reading blood test results as a full picture changes the conversation. Instead of chasing isolated numbers with temporary fixes, it allows a woman to see how her body works as a whole. The imbalance isn't a failure, it's a signal. And when the signal is understood, the path forward becomes clearer. Harmony is possible, not by silencing one instrument, but by helping the entire orchestra find its rhythm again.